Welcome to What is Going for new thought from the edge of Each week on OMTimes' flagship radio show, veteran broadcaster, author, and media consultant Sandy Sedgbeer conducts thought-provoking interviews with inspirational authors, artists, musicians, scientists, speakers, and filmmakers who are working at the point where spirituality and science meet consciousness at the very edge of Here is your host, Sandy Sedgbeer.
Hello. The world is changing, and while there's nothing new in that, what's unsettling for so many people is the sudden acceleration of the pace at which change is taking place. From finance, technology and information to geopolitics, the environment, and the mass movement of individuals displaced by poverty, war and violence, it seems that every societal structure and system that we have traditionally regarded as solid and dependable is now showing itself to be anything but. Nothing makes sense anymore. Nothing is behaving the way that it should. Our external world is changing faster than our existing belief patterns, and emotional reference points are able to accommodate. And it's filling many, many people with intense anxiety, stress and fear as the dreams they had for a safe and secure future for themselves and their loved ones are crumbling, leaving many wondering, how do we find stability in unstable times? How do we safely navigate the shifting tides of a world that's in the full flood of transition? Where do we find our comfort and security when we're being forced to take a collective step into the unknown? With me today is British economist turned bioresonance technology pioneer Bill Ayling, whose big picture analyses of current financial and geopolitical events and what they really mean for the evolution of humanity are among the most insightful and helpful commentaries I've read in years. Bill Ayling, welcome.
Thank you very much, Sandy.
You graduated with a Master's in Economics and you immediately started working in the financial sector in the City of London. Now, you had a 17-year career that took you all over the world. You spent 2 years working in Tokyo as a credit trader for banks including HSBC, Merrill Lynch, Deutsche Bank and JP Morgan, managing some of the largest sterling credit transactions of that time. And then in 2004, you gave it all up. First to study alternative medicine, and then to further your exploration of the possibilities presented by frequency and consciousness technology. Now, that must have sent your old colleagues in the financial sector through the roof, just laughing and wondering what on earth had happened to you. So tell us briefly about that journey and how it led you to using bioresonance technology to facilitate the expansion of consciousness for children, families and businesses.
Yeah, well, I suppose the change that the world's seeing at the moment sort of happened to me a little bit prematurely, and like a lot of people in this arena, actually the change was, the catalyst was my son, who had various learning difficulties and had, in his very conscious way, upset my perfect world. And I decided I had to find a solution to some of the issues he faced. And at 7 years old, he was unable to read. And I happened across a series of therapies and a woman working with something called bioresonance, which had a profound impact on him and managed to turn around his reading in just 3 months to get him to reading at his peer age group. And this really got my attention. So my curiosity was such that I had to get involved. And as I got further and further immersed in the world of sort of alternative therapies and healing, my affection for the city waned somewhat, and life changed pretty dramatically and pretty quickly, and not in a very planned way, but it evolved into something much bigger and much more exciting than that world. But that grounding gave me a really good insight into actually what was going on in the world, even though I couldn't see it from the perspective within, when I started exploring the world of alternatives and consciousness, I got a very different perspective on what was going on. And although my work still involves children and helping them with their issues and people sort of with their evolving consciousness, I still keep an eye on what's going on in the world.
Well, as your very insightful commentaries do point out, the world is changing drastically, rapidly, beyond all recognition. And the effects of that are having an enormous impact on us. So let's talk about, how it's changing and in what areas that are influencing us the most.
Well, we're getting hit. It's almost a perfect storm. My son was one of a generation of children that came along with what presented as problems, but actually what they were displaying was heightened sensitivity. The issues we were addressing were hypersensitivities in these children, and what they demonstrated to us over the years we were working with them was that they were a new step in our evolution. They were adjusted for a change that we weren't necessarily percepting, but evolution is predicated on sensitivity and adaptability, and these children were here to tell us something. And then, as you get more immersed into the world of consciousness, which they opened up for us, you start seeing how everything is connected in a way. So you can go from earth changes, which I think directly impact our physiology and our biology. You can look at the technology that's emerging and how that's going to impact our belief patterns, our understanding of the very nature of the world, the very nature of physics. The economy is that's the area that I'm most closely linked to, and my surprise there is that the system that has been going on has continued as long as it has. But the other part I look at is obviously information. We all have access to much more information than we ever have done, and that can lead to kind of overwhelm. So we're sitting in this sort of perfect storm of sort of different influences that are creating sort of a real tidal wave of instability. And whilst this can be disturbing, if you're at the effect of it, it's actually a really empowering time for those that can manage their energy through this and actually ride the wave rather than stand in front of it trying to stop it.
Well, earth changes, we're all aware of them, but for many people, they're over there. They're somewhat remote from us. So the impact, I think, is not quite as visceral. Technology is something that most people, greet with delight and pleasure. It makes life a lot easier, they think. It's the children and the economy, I think, that are probably impacting many people most because, they directly involve us. And with the economy so unstable, with children being so different than anything most people have encountered before, it must be causing an awful lot of stress for people.
Yeah, it's not a tough time, and it's not an easy time, and I don't underestimate the challenges of raising this generation of children. I've sort of had a go myself as best I can, and working with lots of families with children who, we refuse to see the children as broken in any way. As I say, we worked with these children. What they demonstrated to us was a heightened sensitivity, which comes across in 1 to 5 senses, and actually that's where problems, inverted commas, would sort of manifest because they couldn't access information without stress. Their sensory system was too acute. But what we also noticed was that their sensitivity extended beyond 5 senses. And so they were in touch with a different level of communication to that which most of us are used to. And what we noticed in these children was that they would really resonate with feeling rather than sort of verbal instructions. So they read the energy almost rather than took the normal instructions. So, and that was a truth to them. The resonance was their truth. And so the way they interacted with the world was very different, and it's actually, I think, going to be very well adapted to what's going to emerge through these changes. It's been a bit tough because I think some of them got here a little early, is the sense I got. But really, if you work with these children in any way, you start to appreciate that the problems that they presented actually turn out quite often to be the gifts. And my concern, my viewpoint on it changed totally. In fact, and like my relationship with my son is what my son offered me was the opportunity to get conscious, to get present, and that was going to be the only way that I could get meaningful communication with him. And so he didn't require me to get present to be okay in the world, but it was an opportunity too good to miss. The economy is going to experience or is experiencing all sorts of turmoil, and is coming to the end of a cycle, a natural cycle. And I think the biggest point that I've taken out of all of my experience with this is that the answers lie within a shifting consciousness rather than trying to adapt an old system that's outlived its use. Well,
I think you've pointed out many times that the children do hold a big key for us. You know, the way they operate in a new paradigm, in a sense, within the old paradigm, is our direction. It's our roadmap to how we can start adapting ourselves in a way, so that
we felt challenged to create an environment in which these children could thrive, because that's the only one that we're going to thrive in as well. So we had to become more sensitive and to get into their experience, if you like, to get a bearing for what's going to emerge.
We're going to come back to that in a moment, Bill. You're listening to What Is Going On. I'm Sandy Sedgbeer, and I'm speaking with British economist turned bioresonance technology pioneer Bill Ayling about how we can create stability in an unstable world. Still to come, how technological advances are challenging the existing economic paradigm, and who is really controlling the economic levers. We'll be back in a few moments. Don't go away.
The future of Internet radio is here. OMTimes Radio, IOM FM. As difficult as it is to believe, there are places in Africa where human traffickers sell albino children and their body parts for use in magic rituals. Humanity Healing International is actively working in Uganda to change this paradigm. The Albino Rescue Project finds albino children who are at risk and places them in safe schools and environments where they can learn and grow free from fear. To learn more or to sponsor a child, visit humanityhealing.org. Humanity Healing is where your heart is.
This is Terry Van Horn, and I want to invite you to join me for my weekly radio show, Healing Light, on OMTimes Radio, every Wednesday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. On Healing Light, we want to bring love, light, and blessings into your world. You can find out more about us at www.healinglightonline.com. Blessings.
America's service members and veterans are strong, forged out of bravery, sacrifice, and duty. Sometimes reaching out for help can be the most challenging and worthwhile mission of all. When you recognize something isn't right, make the call to the Veterans Crisis Line or Military Crisis Line. Dial 1-800-273-8255 and press 1.
Welcome back. I'm Sandy Sedgbeer, and my guest is economist, bioresonance technology pioneer, and evolutionary commentator, Bill Ayling. Bill Ayling, what specifically, in your view, is triggering the acceleration in our evolution?
That's a really good question. I think there's, for a scientific explanation, I would literally go into the positioning of the universal energies, if you like. We're all subject to field effects. It's the way that we're all organised. Those fields are changing dramatically and moving us into a new era of a different level of consciousness. It's just a reorganisation of humanity on a global scale, and it'll probably be galactic scale as well when you get into it. But there's a whole series of forces that come through, largely in our experience as light and information, that are basically enlightening, raising the consciousness of the planet, which includes the planet itself. And, you know, this is going to change, or is changing, or has changed. The where it's come from, the why it's come from, you know, interesting questions, but less relevant to how we navigate that process, I feel.
Now, you say that technological advances are challenging the existing economic paradigm. How so?
Well, technology has been fairly tame in its advances until we got up to the point of the internet, for example, which just exploded the capacity of information available to people. But really, even so, if I'm flying to New York from London, I'm using a 50-year-old technology. I'm still getting in the same plane, the same thing. So although it feels like we've moved a long, long way very quickly, I think that the things that are coming online now, including particularly in the energy arena, are going to really challenge the old structures of employment, and with it the whole economic model. I've talked before in the past about just such a simple phenomenon as 3D printing, and the ability to actually download open source. This is all free stuff. You can get millions and millions of different products online for free. If you've got a 3D printer, you can use rubbish plastic to recycle plastic to produce all sorts of things, including something as threatening as a gun. There's a working model of a 3D printed gun, but I think we're moving on from those sort of tweaks in the existing technology to a whole new era where there's one organisation, the Keshe organisation, which is going to be making free energy devices for the home available on a commercial basis from the end of August to the beginning of September. Now, that changes the whole economic paradigm, because the economy is based on an assumption of scarcity. And you can trace that back to the fundamental scarcity of energy. And we've had an oil or energy-based economy for the best part of the last century. And you take away the ability to charge people for energy. That challenges an awful lot of not only corporations but governmental structures as well. I think the technology has been around for much longer than people realise, but it's just how this technology is introduced. And my personal view on it is that it's actually had to be held back at times until the consciousness on the planet is ready to handle it. Even someone like Tesla held back some of his information because he didn't trust mankind not to weaponize the technology he was introducing. But that dam, I think, is very, very close to breaking now. And with that, it creates a lot of challenges for the existing status quo and economic muscle.
Well, I would imagine that whoever is in control in this world has been suppressing free energy. We've been hearing about it for years, but it's never actually become free and available to us. But when you say it's being held back because we don't have the consciousness. It's not those people that are holding it back because we don't have the consciousness. You're referring to something bigger than that.
Yeah, I think, again, the shift we're undergoing is one of consciousness in its nature, and you can think of consciousness almost as intelligence or a level of thinking, or even it's as simple as a level of maturity. And, we've conducted ourselves as a race at a pretty base level of egoic consciousness for a long time now. You just need to watch the news to see how that plays out. And realistically, the question who's controlling the levers, is it the Illuminati, is it the people in secret societies and all these things? Again, to my mind, that's less relevant than what's actually controlled that or allowed that to proliferate is a level of consciousness or a lack of consciousness at a global level. And as more and more people awaken and become more attuned to their own truth, the ability for others to manipulate and for them to manipulate themselves is going to diminish, and that will be a time when I think this technology will come online with a real purpose, real safety, and a real evolutionary content. It's only threatening when viewed from the old paradigm, and the old paradigm is based on an assumption of lack. And what this technology, I think, is going to destroy is that belief in lack. Now, that's going to create a lot of cognitive dissonance for a lot of people. People are going to struggle to fit that into their worldview, and that will be an uncomfortable truth for a lot of people who, aren't really accessing the available information and consciousness in a productive way. But as I say, I really believe that it's only threatening from the old paradigm. If you were to tune into the kids and the young adults that have come through this generation of the new kids, I think they'll embrace it seamlessly. I really do.
You say that there's really three ways that people respond to this situation. One is clinging on to the old internal model of reality and attempting to impose it on external conditions. One is to engage in denial. I think, we've been in denial for a long time, but we only have to look at what's happening in the world today, look at the American, whole election process and how many people who didn't stand up to be counted when, Bush stole the election, the presidency, several years ago, but they are standing up now. So we see the evidence of a changing consciousness.
Well, we certainly, I'm based in the UK, and the recent Brexit vote was, to my mind, a demonstration of a rejection of the old from the population, and it caught a lot of the authorities by surprise, and a lot of watching financial markets. Again, a lot of the powers normally in control didn't get that right, and I think, and the reasoning behind the vote was again, I think, falsely portrayed by a media that didn't understand and is presenting the consensus view. But to me, it was just an opportunity for that population just to reject the status quo, and I think it's as simple as that. And people have been subdued for a long time, particularly in the West, because they've had a really comfortable slavery. They've been able to go on holiday and have their plasma televisions and have comfortable living, but it still has been a slavery system based on the banking system, and it's a really uncomfortable thing to acknowledge, but people have actually fought for their slavery. It's a crazy situation, but with the increasing information and the raising in consciousness, which will get people to be able to access their own truth, those old control mechanisms really aren't going to have any purchase at all.
So The third way of responding, which you say is to understand and change our internal model of reality. I mean, it's one thing for people to say, okay, I'm not in denial anymore. I'm standing up for what I believe in. It's quite another to really shift your internal model of reality. I mean, that's challenging.
It's very tough. It's very tough because your whole identity will have to change. But this is part for anyone who's been on that spiritual journey, and, you know, that journey through the levels of egoic consciousness, you know, that to some extent, that is what awakening is about. It's actually seeing a truth that had been shrouded before. And frankly, at the moment, with the amount of information that's available to people, you know, it is a choice. You know, to remain unconscious at the moment is an active choice. A lot of people, I understand, will stick with that, but it will be very tough for people who are trying to hold that old internal model of reality, because there just won't be the structures around to support them. I mean, when I was working with my son, my daughter didn't have any issues with learning at school at all, and as I watched them progress through the school, my concerns were more for her because she was more easily seduced by the system because of her ability to conform with it. And I think a lot of those people who are relying on that old paradigm system of, well, it's absolving self-responsibility, they may find this transition the hardest because their identity will change. Having said that, I think they'll move into something pretty quickly as a more coherent and stable, resonant sort of frequency pervades the earth, and it won't take many people.
You're listening to What is Going On. I'm Sandy Sedgbeer, and I'm speaking with economist, bioresonance technology pioneer, and evolutionary commentator Bill Ayling. We'll be back in a few moments with why change doesn't have to signify instability. Stay tuned.
The cutting edge of conscious radio, OMTimes Radio, IOM FM. Being a radio host on IOM FM allows you to build your show on a rich platform with the power of the internet to fulfill your outreach goals and connect with a very specialized and global online audience, unlimited by time and distance. OMTimes Radio will provide you with web relevance, a recognizable conscious brand, and with the standard of excellence that has accompanied every single OMTimes endeavor. Host your show with OMTimes Radio Network.
My name is Victor Furman. Some call me The Voice. I've always been fascinated with human nature, spirituality, science, and the crossroads at which they meet. Join me Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern on OMTimes Radio, and we'll explore these topics and so much more on Destination Unlimited.
There is no death, only a change of worlds. Chief Seattle. Deborah Livingston is an award-winning intuitive psychic medium whose international services include mediumship, spiritual assessment, animal communication, and spiritual mentoring. She is a published author and a trained shaman. Deborah provides evidential messages from spirit and departed loved ones. Learn more at deblivemedium.com. That's DEBLIV medium.com.
We don't want your teddy bears. We don't want your shoes. We don't want your pencils, books, or blankets. We want to go home.
Around the world, 95% of children in orphanages have living parents, but poor and vulnerable families are often forced to give up children they love. Children need the love of a family. Orphanages are the problem, not the solution. Disability Rights International helps families around the world keep their children at home. Learn how you can help at drikids.org.
Welcome back. Bill Ayling, you have said that if we wish to transition with grace and ease, it's important that we're not at the effect of the collective instability. In fact, it is by individually holding energetic stability that we will allow the collective internal model of reality to adapt to one which will serve us all better. Expand on that.
Well, it's my lengthy way of saying be the change you want to see in the world, I guess. And if we're going to sort of understand and change our version of reality, understand what's going on and change our internal model, we need to get a reliable inner guidance system. And this requires emotional stability, and it requires a higher level of thinking than most are accustomed to. The emotional stability is important because, particularly in these times, there's going to be a lot of noise. There's going to be a lot of static. We're already seeing it, and we see it used directly as a tool, actually, by those trying to slow down the change or halt the change, by creating and governing through a model of fear. And quite often, if you're at the effect of that collective instability, that emotional noise, then you lose track of where you're actually positioned yourself, you know, how you're actually feeling about a particular situation or what's going on. And so one of the techniques we learned with the children we worked with, because they were so sensitive to other people's feelings and emotions and the general energy of an environment, you know, a lot of our work was designed to actually not insulate them from that, but to actually allow them to hold their own space within an environment, within an emotional state that wasn't theirs. And the second part of it is to actually be able to think in a different way, to move beyond reactive thinking, because just as there's going to be a lot of undisciplined and noisy emotions flying around in changing times, there's a lot of nonsense thoughts as well, and a lot of propagated thoughts, you know, and a lot of our teaching and a lot of our the way that we're brought up is basically just to tune our rationalizer, which is our mind. We're designed with, you know, education is designed to accept the view of the experts and to take what we're given as a truth. Now that's becoming a lot less obvious at the moment. It's quite opaque. And so if we're going to reach higher levels of thinking and be able to consciously process information, which we're going to have to do because of the overwhelming amount of information with which we're all being hit at the moment, we have to build a really good integrated energetic circuit which has as its focal point the heart. And for me, the heart, described in many different ways by many different people, for me the most important role of the heart is as a truth resonator. It's almost the rock solid part of us which knows the truth. And again, some of our work that we do with bioresonance and our other techniques involve getting people to be able to direct and process information to the heart to actually access what is their own truth, as opposed to a truth they're being given. There's no absolute truth. Nobody's absolutely right. But what's essential in these times is that you know what is your truth. And, you know, part of the challenge at the moment is to build a really reliable inner guidance system. And as I say, this requires emotional stability, and it allows access to new levels of thoughts.
So, how do we move to a different level of thought?
Well, the first level of thought, as I said, is that reactionary sort of entrained mind, the rationalizing mind that is designed, as the name suggests, to rationalize the information. There's too much information in our just general experience through our five senses for us to be able to process effectively. So the rationalized mind decides which pieces of information are right and not. And that's, in our society, that's traditionally formed by, you know, the scientists, the priests, the teachers, all of those experts, those people with the information that we take as right. The great catchphrase of our time is scientifically proven, and that's taken as a truth. Now, conscious thought is a level where we process information in a slightly more curious and more probing type of way, and it's when people move into conscious thought, which again is a factor of being out of stress, which is why the emotional stability is so important. If you're in a stress situation, you're reacting to, fear from wherever it's come, your processing, your thought is very unlikely to move beyond that reactionary survival basis thought. But as part of this conscious evolution, more and more people are moving into this conscious arena of thought where there's a willingness to accept new information and they'll apply it to the existing paradigm. These are kind of the inventors, if you like, the people who think outside the box, because the reactive mind is the box. The conscious thinkers are the people who look outside. And the way that's traditionally worked is to apply that thinking to existing problems. But, I think we're going to another level again, which is what I've seen working with the kids and through our own work in these sort of higher levels of consciousness, is you move into the arena of inspired thinkers, inspired thinking, which is, it's a level of thought which is actually, it's almost like a direct line to God, if you like. I think of the mind as an information receiver and processor. And when you're stressed, you receive a very small band of information and process it in a very, very automated fashion. The conscious thinker is slightly more aware of other lines of thoughts, other information, is able to apply that. When you get really clear and really present and you're in touch with your truth, there's an opportunity to get into a level of thought which I call inspired, because it comes directly from spirit, and that's where the really valuable new information that's going to progress this shift in consciousness, this movement in the world, is going to come from. And I think there are examples of it out there already, more and more, and we've seen it through history with people like Einstein. His famous quote was, it's 1% inspiration, 99% perspiration, but you can't force that inspiration. It comes to you.
You talked earlier about, the way we process information, and you draw a distinction between the different processing areas in the body. You say that just as the gut is not designed to do algebra, the mind is not designed to do feeling. Now, the children of today, so many of them are being diagnosed with what is termed sensory processing disorder, which is, just a label, a handy label to describe the fact that many of them are exquisitely sensitive.
Absolutely, absolutely. And they're good examples of this process, because the simplistic way I split the body is above the heart and below the heart. And above the heart is designed to receive and process high frequency information. It's more etheric, it's more conceptual, it's more ideas. It's our sort of line to the universe, our connection to the universe, if you like, through that thought process. Below the heart is where the real work happens down here on Earth, and it's where we process feeling, and it's where things materialize. It's where all of the work is done in the body to actually bring things into being. There's not a lot materially produced in the body above the heart. Everything happens below that, and to describe that, it's a bit like the mind can think about digesting a biscuit all it likes, but it's got absolutely no idea how to do it when it comes down to digesting the biscuit. The body knows exactly what to do with that. It knows that process intuitively. And similarly, the below the heart knows how to process feelings. And one of the problems we've had in our world, of late, and I don't think it's by mistake, is that we try to process feeling in the wrong center. So we try to process emotion and feeling in the mind, and the mind doesn't know what to do with that. The mind really doesn't know how to process that type of information. And when you've got the mind trying to do the wrong job continually, it kind of loses a circuit in the body, and we lose touch with that, with the heart. So the information flow to the heart to determine our truth isn't clear enough. And in that process, we quite often lose ourselves. I think it's one of the things I see with depression is when people lose the ability to process information in such a way that it reaches their heart. And, a common phrase people go is, I just don't know myself anymore. And it's like they've lost touch with their own information, with their own truth resonator. And when these kids are operating, what we find confusing is that they don't process emotion with the mind. They don't. When they encounter a feeling, they don't immediately try to rationalize it, whatever. They express it or react to it. And quite often the way that we've been trained to act is actually to disguise our feelings. You cannot do that with these children.
Well, it's interesting how, there are so many things that they just will have nothing to do with. And you talk about, high frequency and low frequency centers, and, things either resonating as truth or not. These kids seem to instinctively know what is true for them, and, they can't compromise.
No, they operate off resonance. That they're more highly attuned to frequency than we are somehow. And it's a big problem for industry even at the moment, because this Generation Y talk that we hear about, people don't know how to market to these kids because they're not manipulated in the same way, and they can't even employ a lot of them because they operate in a different paradigm.
You're listening to What Is Going On. I'm Sandy Sedgbeer, and I'm speaking with economist and evolutionary commentator Bill Ayling about finding stability in an unstable world. Coming up in our last segment, what can bioresonance technology do to help you raise your consciousness as well as accelerate the awakening of humanity? We'll be back in a few moments.
Bringing a more conscious lifestyle to your world. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
Spiritual, metaphysical, green living, psychic, alternative healing, life coaching. Do any of these or similar terms apply to your business or cause? If so, you are in a niche market with a very specific audience. Conscious Gate PR is the world's leading conscious public relations agency. With a global reach of over 4 million and growing, we offer comprehensive media campaigns to our targeted market. Learn more at ConsciousGatesPR.com. Conscious marketing for conscious minds.
Hi everyone, this is Shay Parker, the host of Best of the Best, which airs live right here on IOM Radio every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern and 5 p.m. Pacific. I'm super excited to bring you expert guest hosts, spiritual discussions, free psychic readings, and so much more. I can promise that you will not want to miss this one-of-a-kind, fun, yet touching, down-to-earth show. Join us every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern, 9 p.m. Pacific on OTR-FM. This is Shay Parker, and I can't wait to see you there.
It's on us to stop sexual assault.
To get in the way before it happens.
To get a friend home safe.
And to not blame the victim.
It's on us.
To look out for each other.
To not look the other way.
It's on us to stand up.
To step in.
To take responsibility.
It's on us, all of us,
to stop sexual assault.
Learn how and take the pledge at itsonus.org.
Welcome back to What Is Going On. I'm Sandy Sedgbeer, and I'm with economist, evolutionary commentator, and bioresonance technology pioneer Bill Ayling. Bill Ayling, what is bioresonance technology?
Bioresonance technology, my favourite question. Bioresonance technology is simply a computer computerized system that is able to communicate or dialogue with the consciousness of a biosystem or an ecosystem. It works on the principle of resonance. It's more or less exactly the same as the conversation we're having, but it's just conducted on a frequency basis outside our five senses. And it's been a remarkable discovery to work with this technology, because it allows us to communicate with a consciousness beyond the mind without the interference of therapists like myself.
So how does it work then? I mean,
how does it work? It produces, the computer we have is able to produce frequency patterns, and when these frequency patterns are transmitted, they resonate with a target or a subject or an individual, and in that process of resonating, it allows a dialogue to be set up, and the consciousness of the individual that we're working with will guide the bioresonance computer through a whole selection of different possibilities. And it's interesting, the technology ourselves, we've been using this technology for over 10 years now, and to us it's just a tool of communication. So while it's obscure to a lot of people, to us it's just like a mobile phone almost that allows us to have a dialogue with an individual. The really interesting part about our work is, what's that dialogue about? What do you have with that dialogue? Again, the technology is advancing so fast that this technology is creeping into areas of people's lives where they don't even see it or recognize it yet, but it will become so familiar soon that everybody will be familiar with what's going on with systems like bioresonance and biofeedback.
When you talk about the consciousness of it, so if somebody is engaged with the program,
mm-hmm.
And there's this, silent, unconscious communication going on, then surely there must be some kind of evolution in the communication, because consciousness is constantly changing.
Yeah, well, that's it's unique in itself in that the program we use has a consciousness of its own, so it kind of evolves with the work that we do. And so it has been, its roots lay, the program we've written lay with the developmental process in children. And so what the basic question our bioresonance program will ask someone is what's your greatest stress in blocking your full expression? And through years and years and years of working with lots of different people, that program has evolved into something that is very, very different to where it started 10 years ago. And each person that comes on the program, we feel actually adds to the consciousness of the program itself. But really, the basic principle of it is that it's a system that removes stress from your system. That might be physical, spiritual, emotional, psychological. Wherever there is a stressor which is interfering with your full expression, the bioresonance program will provide frequencies to remove that stress. It's a bit like the noise cancelling headphones that people may be familiar with, that block out the ambient background noise and allow the true source frequency to be heard. Now, when you remove stress from a system, it allows, it allows access to that true frequency, that underlying nature of a person. It kind of bypasses all of those survival patterns that you see in people and repeated behaviours. That rational mind that I was talking about that is purely reactive. And when we were working with the children, their sensitivity was so great that they were in stress most of the time because of the harshness of the world they came into. And our work was to remove stress from their experience without diminishing their sensitivity. And what we found is that that's a process that works well for adults families, even properties, believe it or not. So we're trying to remove stress from an expression. And when you remove stress, then you get access to something much deeper, and that's the basis of what we've been trying to do.
You mentioned earlier about Keshe technology, free energy, and how this has been suppressed for various different reasons. I mean, what you're talking about is every bit as powerful and life-changing. How come the bioresonance technology has not been suppressed?
Well, it is in certain places, particularly in the States. There's been a few practitioners using the same system that we've had who've not allowed to use it anymore. And really it's because it's been too marginal, it's been ahead of its time, and it's not really posed a significant threat to those bigger interests. Again, this great barrier that people have is it scientifically proven? Now, to do a full-scale, proper, clinical trial on the effectiveness of this stuff is expensive, and the people involved in this industry haven't got the backing or the wherewithal to actually enter an arena on that basis. And in small areas of success, it got very popular for a while after a news report on the BBC saying how effective it was in stopping addiction to smoking. But then very soon the program makers were taken away. They weren't allowed to report on it again. Very subtle things, just again that element of control which keeps it marginalised, if you like. But I also think it is a technology ahead of its time, and I also think a lot of the practitioners using it were actually applying it in an old paradigm way. So rather than it being a creative, expansive technology, they were using it as a remedial technology. And I think just the underlying consciousness there may well limit its effectiveness. But
so how do people actually engage with the program then? I mean, if I came to you and said, hey, I've heard about this and I want some of it, what happens?
Well, it's a very simple process because, again, you're working. One of the features of this new technology, and especially if you're looking at something like the Keshe technology, what's happening is there's a whole new world of physics that's opening up. And what was possible in the old paradigm is very limited compared to what's available now in this new paradigm physics that's emerging. And the technology that we've been using was a sort of precursor of some of this newer physics that's emerging. And so there's a connectivity between people that expands beyond space and time. So our technology can connect to anybody anywhere in the world, and all we need is a name, a date of birth, and address, and we can set up a dialogue with an individual. And for a long time we've had more clients in the States where we've never taken our computers either than we had in the UK. So it's got a global reach. But all we need is that information, and then we run a 25-minute program on an individual every day. And the program is designed to remove the stress that's either historic or current or whatever's going on in their life. And it's a subtle process. It's designed to allow the developmental process of an individual to unfold over time. And we've had remarkable results. We did our own scientific, inverted commas, sort of study of the effects it had on some of the children that we were working with, and the improvements in IQ and etc. were quite remarkable. But that was a side effect of less stress.
And you say it can actually raise my consciousness.
It can raise your consciousness because it allows you to hold your attention point in a higher dimensional space because there's less stress. And it will actually guide your consciousness as to where it wants to go.
What does it cost?
To join the program is £100 a month, and for that you get balancing every day. and 25-minute balance every day, so it's £100 per month per person.
And of course, I could, stop it at any time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we have people. What tends to happen is people come on for one particular reason, and then they expand, and it becomes, for some people, it becomes part of the fabric. It's a background sort of de-stress that, it's not going to change your life dramatically, but it's always there supporting it in the background. We do have, there are lots of, we precisely because of the old system, we make no medical claims or anything about what this can do. But, we've got a lot of people who have been with us for a long time. And just anecdotally, none of my family have been to the doctor in over 12 years. So
incredible. So, Bill, you created an online seminar on this topic of creating stability in an unstable world. And in that seminar, you cover all the topics we've discussed tonight and more in much greater depth. Now, you're making these available in their entirety to our listeners. How do they get them?
They just go to our website, which is thecreativespace.org, and on the front page, there's, across the title bar, there's a page, Stability in an Unstable World, and we'd like to give these to everybody just to sort of spread a bit of optimism about the shift, because it might be a bit shaky at times.
Okay. Bill Ayling, we have to leave it there. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you very much.
And once again, that website is acreativespace.org. You can also sign up for Bill's newsletter commentaries on these changing times. I'm Sandy Sedgbeer. Join me next week for another edition of What is Going On. Till then, it's goodbye from me.